Okay. This week, we'll be talking about blessings and thanksgiving. This kind of stood out to me a little bit for this week, which is, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. In a time of thanksgiving, there's nothing I don't think that we could be more thankful for, or there's a lot of things possibly, but to be able to be thankful that you live among a people in a community that serve the Lord faithfully. But not only that, you live in a town that possibly leans toward more for living for the Lord than not. And then the state, and then the nation, obviously, as you see it progress out. And we are all benefit so much by the blessings of the Lord. And I'm not telling you something you don't already know. We can look around the world and see nations that don't have the Lord or serve the Lord as their God. You can see the debauchery. You can see the evilness at work. We can see the evilness at work in our own land, in various pockets and areas where things have gone awry. I remember when that bookstore, I guess it's called a bookstore, whatever, came into this town called, was it Babylon?
Mm-hmm.
I could not believe it. In Cleveland, Tennessee.
Still here.
Is it still here?
Yeah, I think it is. It's moved up.
I ain't been there lately, so I don't know.
I think it's on 74 up there, water, when you come off Dalton Pike.
Yeah, I don't go down that way that much, so I believe you're right. Yeah,
I didn't
Yeah.
know what it was, but I've seen it and went,
yeah.
You don't need to go in there.
I know, I mean,
So,
driven by.
That's this swamp that it,
yeah. I mean, that's just in your face. And so, anyway. and of
When they
course-
first opened, sorry, when
Go
they
ahead.
first opened, I want to say the owner of it was somehow connected. I don't know if they were the parent, a grandparent, uncle of someone at school, and they were offering to give us like some school supplies, but it had their logo on it. We were like, no, thank you. They were gonna underwrite something, or we said no, thank you. We didn't need it.
I have shied away from computer and computer stuff ever since. But my son, I don't even know how many years ago this was, maybe 10. Chris told me, Pop, you need to come out of the cave and join this century. He had a computer that he said, I change every 3 or 4 years, whatever it is. And he said, I want to sell this to you really cheap. It's already got all your email stuff, everything all set up. It takes a long time to set one up, I've heard. He said, give me $100 for it. He said, you need to join the rest of the world. I said, okay. And he got it going. He said, I want you to copy these pictures and put them in this file. He showed me how to do that. He said, you can't hurt anything, just play with it. You'll figure it out as you go. And they left the house, and I was doing what he said, and I hit a button, and Babylon came up, and I went, and I about broke the hinges off that laptop. And he came back, and I was livid. I said, what did you turn me loose with here? This has got pornography already on it. He said, show me. I said, I don't know how to show you. I don't know where it came from. He just said Babylon. He said, that's a search engine. I said, well, it's also a bad bookstore on the other end of town. So, yeah. I
Yeah,
get a chuckle every time I see the name.
yeah, and there's you can get into some things innocently. I think when I was working on my master's, I was looking up some Greek stuff and typed in a word, looking for something, hit enter, and oh my gosh. And so we share the same computer, and I started backing away from the thing, and I said, Tanya, come here, right now. Come here. This was an accident. Here's what I typed in. So just so you know, we're getting away from this. And so, and then just of late, there's a movie coming out called Wicked.
Mm-hmm.
Wicked's coming out. Mattel has had planted on a bunch of dolls. Was it
Yeah,
or
on the
some
back
kind
of
of
the
product
packaging.
on their packaging? I don't know how many thousands of those things they made, but when they put the term on the packaging, wicked.com, they were supposed to put wickedmovie.com. Because if you go to wicked.com, you get a surprise. Of course, you have to be 18 to enter, or they ask you that disclaimer or whatever. And so it puts you off when you see people living in what we would want, what we would hope for, is a decent land of people that serve the Lord, and you can't get there unless you just serve the Lord. We can't do it on our own. You can't legislate it from the halls of Congress. It has to be in our hearts. That's where it begins. That's where it has to start. And so, then obviously, this next verse is Psalms 33 and verse 12. Let's see here, what was that previous one? Yeah, that was continuing. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he has chosen as his own inheritance. And then we get to 2 Chronicles 7:14. We know this very plainly. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. Solomon received instruction from the Lord, and so did the people of Israel at different times, that if they would do right, follow the law, serve him, everything would be okay. But if they went after other gods, he said they would be taken over by other nations. And he would say every time, or the reference was always made with regards to him, the temple, and I will destroy the temple. And so, and the destruction of the temple would be a sign to the nations around them that this was the judgment of God because of their sin against him. There are times when we don't really realize that we have it much better in our situation than we think. Sometimes we can see other situations, realize, oh, this could be a lot worse, and learn to be thankful for our surroundings. I picked up on the story of a guy that I want to talk to you about how thankful he was and how blessed he felt and his impact upon this nation. He was born in Russia. His name was born Israel Balin. He was born in Russia on May the 11th, 1888. He was the youngest of 6 children of a Jewish couple. His dad's name was Moses Balin. He brought his family to New York in 1893. A few years later, the dad died. So this young son of his had a particular talent. So he left school and helped to support the family by entertaining on the street, singing songs, performing skits on the sidewalks in New York on the Lower East Side. So he began to write music, try to write songs, write out songs and get lyrics. He would have a tune that would come to his mind, and he would try to work out the tune to what he was liking. He never learned to read music or write music, but he was had the rudimentary skills of a pianist, and so he moved from being a street entertainer and got a job as a singing waiter, and then later had put songs in Song Plugger in Tin Pan Alley. He would first work out his songs, his compositions on the piano, then while playing for someone, he'd have that person to transcribe the notes onto a sheet, I guess you could say, for others who would want to see what he's playing, the melody or whatever, or the song. And so, and he continued that same system for his entire career. He served in the Great War. Now, if you recognize him and know who he is, that's okay. But I'm going to hold out for as long as I can, or for a little bit anyway, until you, because he later had changed his name when he started in his entertainment part because of the Jewish anti-Semitism in New York and around Broadway at the time. In 1938, well, when he served in the Great War from 1917 to 1918, they didn't put him on the front. They kept him back because of his musical and entertaining abilities, to where he would entertain and go to places and would help raise money toward the war effort. And it was during that time he wrote a particular song, but he couldn't figure out where that song needed to fit. So in 1938, when he saw things beginning to go south with wars and stuff, things of that nature, he was greatly, you think you might know who it is, Nick? You probably do know who it is, don't you?
I think I do.
Okay. Things started going south. It was on Armistice Day, November 11th, 1938, that he found the spot where this song could debut. And there was a lady by the name of Kate Smith who made his song famous. Of course, by now, some of you are nodding your head. That's Irving Berlin. He was the one that changed his name because of things that were around, that was going on around him. Well, he wrote, let's see here, what was that one called? Easter Parade. He did over, 19 musical shows, produced 19 musical shows, wrote 18 musical scores, and over 1,000 songs during the next 50 years, such as Easter Parade, White Christmas, if you remember that one. He also did one that was very successful in 1946, Annie, Get Your Gun. Call Me Madam, that starred Ethel Merman. And so he did these things, and it was later said by his daughter that when he wrote the song that is very famous, God Bless America, he was so thankful to live in a country that he was able to become successful. He was able to have an impact upon the impact of the freedoms of this nation had on him. Even though he had some persecution, they wasn't the best of times. Sometimes we look in the past thinking they didn't have any problems. Well, there's always been problems. But yet he was thankful because in Russia, it was nothing like it in the United States at that time. And I'm sure even right now there's a lot of difference between the two. And so, but his daughter made the comment that he felt so blessed and he was so thankful that he wrote this song because of his feelings of thankfulness and gratitude to live in this nation. We know the words to this song. God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her. Sorry that doesn't render any better than it does up there. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. It goes better when you sing it. God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans White with Foam, God Bless America, My Home Sweet Home. And of course, you know the song and know the rest. Irving Berlin was, as we all know, became quite famous. The proceeds of this song, he never received any royalties from it. He gave all the royalties to the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts of America. Kate Smith, that became her song, and she was attached to that song. It was attached to her for the entirety of her life. Not all of Berlin's musical productions were successful. He had one in 1962 that didn't go over too well. It's called Mr. President. And it just didn't fit because of the rock and roll era. Sometime around the 60s and 70s, Elvis Presley came out with a rock and roll version of White Christmas. It was his mission to go to all the radio stations, contact them, and let them know that they shouldn't play that because it just didn't fit. I mean, you take somebody of the music that he wrote, these scores of music, it didn't sit well with him. And so, since in 1962, when that musical production didn't go too well, he took it really hard. He couldn't handle it. And so for the next 20 years, he became a recluse. He died in 1989. His wife died a year before him. But he was known to be a very giving person. He would give to various organizations because of how he was blessed. He had a longing to for the freedoms. He had a longing for the right to prevail, if you will. I didn't read anything in particular that talked about a religious slant or anything of that nature. Being Jewish, didn't see much about that part of him. Now, even in a nation such as ours, it makes you wonder, and of course I like to think that there are others who would feel the way that we do. Do we see a decline in such a way that we're driven to the point that we're going to pray for our nation more than we do? Because there are times that we feel like we're at ease. We can get at ease because it seems like everything's going our way. But once again, what would happen if Babylon decided to have other openings around here? I'll be honest with you, just riding through this town, I have a prayer warrior sitting in the passenger seat. And anytime we go by Harry's and their wine, Tanya curses their establishment. Not curse as cursing, as in curse you. Let this be something that the Lord will get glory out of. And Harry's has taken every corner of Cleveland over by storm, and all of them have this wine and spirits and stuff that they're selling in it. He seems to have been very prolific at doing what he does. And then there's other things, I didn't realize some of the history it had with some of the pool halls and different little dives around here. Just so happens, I happened to know somebody years ago, we were just riding around, and he said, he grew up here, and he said, oh yeah, we used to shoot pool over here, and we used to do this over here, and Cleveland? Why would Cleveland have this kind of stuff? You wouldn't think, but then you realize I'm not in Kansas anymore. I went down to Chattanooga one time years ago to try to get a part for this little car I was fixing up for my daughter, and I had an electrical fire in the front under the hood, and I stopped, lifted the hood, and figured out what it was, and got it put out. And I'm down here in Chattanooga. It's about 1 o'clock in the day, and all of a sudden somebody walks up to me and says, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm fine, how are you? And he said, you know, and they began to talk in a manner that Welton wasn't used to. In fact, Miss Tanya wouldn't like it at all. And then as I sized up the situation, I realized, oh, this is a prostitute. I was dumbfounded. It's the middle of the day. Cars going
What are
around.
you doing in her territory?
Apparently, I hit her area when she was on the job. Of course, we dispatched that situation real quick. And so, what does it take for us to have the sense that we need to pray and lift up our nation, our town, our leaders more? What does it take for us to have that place, that place in our thinking? Any thoughts, responses?
You guys don't realize how fortunate we are to live where we live. Because being from the north, or a little bit further north than here, at Carson is in Walker Valley, and they have concerts. And they sing at least one religious or spiritual song in every concert. And when I sent some of that to some other people, some relatives, they made the comment, you mean they allowed that? You don't realize, being from, it's southern Ohio, but still, you don't realize how fortunate we are that we can, at one of those concerts, people were raising their hands.
Last year.
Yeah, it was like a worship service.
It was.
We were there.
100%.
I mean, it was really good.
They pray before events too. Sometimes you almost ready for them to make an altar call.
And in the north, we just don't do that. You can't, they don't do anything religiously or spiritually in the schools, anywhere.
Yeah.
So you don't realize how blessed we are to be where we are.
Yes. And that's my whole point. There's lots of blessings that we have living in this nation, a lot to be thankful for. I know the election has gone in a particular way where Trump is. It seemed like things were turning around for, you know, on the surface, but we know that there's a swamp no matter what. I know he keeps saying drain the swamp. I'm kind of like, okay, we need a candidate that comes behind him and says, I'm going to sanitize the swamp. It's one thing to drain it, it's another thing to clean it. What does it take for us, and that's my last point, what does it take? Where do we have to get to where we come to the point that we pray for our leaders on a regular basis?
I think what you just said, we need to keep saying. We need to tell the next generation and the next one and the next one. This is a little podunk town in Cleveland, Tennessee, but you don't realize how good you have it. Go somewhere else. I tell the kids at Cleveland High, if you haven't been anywhere, find an opportunity, go somewhere else. You'll love America when you come back.
Oh, yeah.
Because whatever is wrong with us, we're still way ahead of whoever's in second place. And if you don't tell them, if you don't put that bug in their ear, it's like there was an old man that sat at the city gates of a city, and he cried and prayed out loud and talked to people as they came by about the condition of the city. And he did it for years, and a little boy came up to him one time and said, my mom said you were doing this 20 years ago. No one pays any attention to you anymore. They just walk by you and they call you a crazy old man. Why do you keep doing it? He said, I started doing it to convince them, and I'm still doing it to convince me. So just don't stop telling the next generations. Just let them know, remind them. That's our job.
I was impressed by that basketball, impressed by the story. The basketball player, that lady basketball player who got in jail in Russia, if you remember, she was down and on USA all the time, and then when she got out, she came here, and I think one of the basketball games that they had, she stood for the national anthem, whereas before she would kneel. She had a whole different view.
Goodness gracious.
Whole,
Yeah.
yes. My little world was changed when I left Mount Holly, Belmont, North Carolina, going to North Belmont Church of God, and had to go to Texas for basic training. Go to basic training, you go in, my first time to sit in it, and I thank God for chaplains and the chapels on the bases. It was not like no church at North Belmont, I can tell you that. And then I had to go from there to Chanute Air Force Base in Illinois. You're on your own. Was there a Church of God anywhere around here? Hello? 22 miles away, I didn't have no car. But you guys, hey, we're gonna go to Chicago. We're of age, we can go to Chicago. We're gonna go get us a tattoo. We're gonna do this and do that. We didn't do that kind of stuff down at Belmont, Mount Holly. We didn't do that. And they're going to go to some places that were kind of seedy places that I know Mama Shirley wouldn't like it with. So Welton's not going to go for a number of reasons. So no, I don't want nothing to do with that. But yet there was, and then there was one of their instructors. There was a Baptist church right off the base, and that was the closest church outside of military that they had. And of course, there on the base, you had all kinds of you could go, you know, dance halls and or a place to go. I forget what they called it now. It's so long ago. But anyway, you can go and just have a good time if you wanted to. But when I went off base, went to that Baptist church, I was thankful to be in that Baptist church. So thankful. But there was just that little bit that was missing that I could only get in a Pentecostal church. And that's when I was on the phone, I was talking to Mom, telling her and Dad about it. Mom wasn't going to have it. She gets on the phone and finds the state overseer's number and calls him. So I got a son who's got grandpas and family. He's been raised in the Church of God, and I want to know if there's anybody we paid tithe all our life, blah, blah, blah. Going to get my son in church, in the Church of God up. Did they not have Church of God in Illinois or something like that? Wasn't long, some fella drove 22 miles one way to pick me up, to take me to the church in Champaign, Illinois. And that's where my buddy I took with me that day, Matt Smith. I got Matt Smith's name. If you remember, Matt was the one, if I remember telling you the story, Matt was raised in California. And he came to me one day when he saw me pulling the New Testament out of my pocket, reading it, and he said, "What's that book you keep looking at in your pocket?" And I said, "Oh, you saw that, did you?" And he said, because I'd duck around a corner, open it up and read a little bit. And I said, "It's the New Testament." "What's that?" So we go through the whole thing. And so anyway, we had spent time together for several weeks, and then when we finally got to go to that church, I could not wait for the altar call. And I went down to the altar, and I told him, I said, "Listen, I'm going there for a minute. Just hang tight here, and I'll be right back." I didn't know what he thought about it. Dummy me didn't think to invite him. So I go down. It was so wonderful to be in the altar. The Baptist church never did have an altar call. I don't know why they didn't, but they didn't. Not while I was going, that I recall. But anyway, I come back, Matt's missing. Where do you go? You know, maybe he had to go to the bathroom. So I kept looking, I couldn't see anybody in the altar, and then the pastor got up, things was closing down, and all of a sudden, up stands Matthew. And he'd come down there, he'd come walking up the aisle, and I could see he was emotionally changed. He sat down. I couldn't wait to ask him what had happened. To close out the service, I said, "What made you go down there?" And he said, "Well, all these conversations we had, I thought about that book you've been reading, that New Testament." And he said, "I thought if I wanted to know God like you say you know God, then I needed to do what you did." And I said, "Okay, you got down there. I didn't never tell you how to pray. What'd you pray?" He said, "God, if you're real, will you make yourself known to me?" I said, "What happened?" He said, "Right away I began to cry." and asked God to forgive me my sins. We left from there, and I gave Matt my New Testament, and I didn't see him without it until the time I left. There's a lot to be thankful for, and so I'm going to hush and let you talk if you've got something you need to say. And so that's my push for today. God bless America.
Another observation, not to change the subject, but
Sure.
another observation about Cleveland is how many times can you go in a restaurant or a store and they're playing worship music? I've gotten to where that is not even the novelty anymore because it happens all over the place. That wowed me when I first moved here.
Mhm.
So, but talking about going from a Pentecostal era to, you know, a Baptist, our son started out at Lee. Our requirement was their freshman year, they had to go to Lee. And he loved it, but he saw some things that he thought were political. Like if you were a PK, they let some things slide, and that really bothered him. So he decided to go to Liberty his second year. And he said, you know, he'd go in chapel, and he said it was good, but there was something missing. And I said, what was that? He said, the Holy Spirit. He said, I have realized I can't live without him. And he ended up going back to Lee his third year and realized every place has got a flaw.
Yeah.
No place is perfect, but Lee was pretty good. And so he finished.
Lee's still pretty good.
It
Lee's got a
is.
lot of problems.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty good. You compare it to anywhere else. That's what I gotta say about that.
It's not the least bit unusual to be in any restaurant in Cleveland and see people pray.
Yeah.
That's just not, that's not the norm in the rest of the country.
And sometimes I go to them and say, it was great to see y'all praying.
He does. Another family.
But you know what? As good as it is here, there's a corrosion happening. We are infiltrated with people that are not of the same persuasion that we are, and slowly and surely they are moving the dial. We got liquor by the drink. We got liquor stores. There's been a lot of changes in Cleveland, Tennessee. People say that we're just catching up with the world, and probably we are. But let me ask you a question, Welton. You said that your mama wouldn't approve of you going into some of those places. Would Jesus have gone?
She was a good representative of him.
But Jesus would have gone into those places.
Yeah.
Well, he was already there in his way,
Yeah, and
but he knew that I didn't have the ability to have his restraint.
yeah, if Jesus were here today, he probably wouldn't be here. He'd probably be over there where those homeless people are,
Yeah.
or somewhere where he would come for what his purpose was. We get real comfortable where we're at.
Yeah, and that's my prayer lots of times is to recognize somebody in need throughout the day or whatever. I made a mistake years ago, wasn't here in Cleveland, was in another town, and I forget what the situation was exactly, but something was off. And this lady who dressed like my grandma, her hair was put up. Grandma didn't put her hair way up, but anyway, my grandma wristed. And I thought, well, that's just a good old Pentecostal lady or something. I feel like I got something in common with her. And so I forget what the situation was observed, and she's looking at it too. And I just made the comment. I said, are you Pentecostal? And she said, H, no, I'm not Pentecostal. She let me know real quick, and I said, won't make that mistake again.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Can't judge a book by its cover. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are correct. You are correct. And so, anyway. Well, let's go to the Lord in
Did
prayer.
you laugh or what did you do?
What I do?
What'd you
I backed up a little bit. I forget what it was, but I was trying to crawfish out of that as quick as I could.
Get out of reach of that woman.
Absolutely, absolutely. You dress like grandma, and you might look like grandma, but you're not like my grandma.
You shouldn't be asking questions that you don't already know the answer to.
That's right. Now, I did have to, we do have to say that, there are times when you try to fill out a situation, you need wisdom, obviously. But I remember the change on this lady's face when I was, working as associate pastor, and I would go to the hospital every Monday and visit, and was driving the church van, and on the way to the hospital was Krispy Kreme. Couldn't miss it. And I had a regular practice of going by Krispy Kreme and getting 2 donuts and a thing of milk. And I'm feeling it now. So, and I remember pulling up that day, and it was, I guess, it was kind of funny, comical for me, because I could look inside, and I seen a couple police cars. There was policemen sitting at the counter eating their donuts. You know, something they try to avoid being accused of. But anyway, the lady came to the window. She's an African American lady, and she just seemed to have this grimace on her face. She looked like she was having a good day, and she was just all business. And when we exchanged the goods, I remember when she come took my money, and then she brought me the food. I remember looking at her and I said, I want you to know that Jesus loves you, and I hope you have a better day than you're having. And her face just completely changed just off of that one comment. And I think it hit a nerve with her because she needed to hear that, I guess, which I'm glad it wasn't like the old lady told me off. But so you never know who you're going to affect just by kind words. And so let's move to our prayer request now and say, do we have some needs that we need to offer up?